Okay, so here we go. So I cut a couple of cardboard, you know, cake pans, whatever you want to call these things. You can buy these, of course, but I just cut them out myself. And I purposely cut them a little undersized, so that when I put the cake on top and then bring the fondant down over the edge of this, there'll be no chance of having a bump or an ugly edge there. So they're a little bit smaller than the cake diameter. And we have our buttercream here. This will go pretty fast. I'll probably need to make at least one other batch of this, maybe two others. And it's fairly thick actually. I might want to thin this out a little bit, but I'll try and go for it. This is also the first time I've had the luxury of using one of these. Finally broke down and bought an offset spreader so that you can actually have a chance at making flat surfaces. So the first step is called crumb coating. So all we're going to do is cover the cakes with frosting, like fix any major problems, and let the frosting dry a little bit to sort of weld the crumbs onto the cake. This way when we frost it a second time, it'll be smoother without the crumbs in there. So first I'm going to put just a little bit on the cardboard, just to kind of keep the cake down there and make sure it doesn't slide away. And if there's anything really horribly wrong with the underside of the cake, this will help fill that up a little bit. And I don't have a cake stand. I actually really would like that, but don't have one of those. And that is that edge that we had, so I'm going to remember to glue that thing back on with some frosting here in a minute. This cake I did not trim. This one is, actually all these are just right out of the pan, and these are all the bottoms, of course, that were in the pans. And I think it's going to be good enough. If we start building it and it looks like it's going to need some help, then I might have to do something else. Alright, not bad. Okay, so let's see if we can fill this little bit of a problem spot up here. And this batch of frosting is only going to be used for the crumb coat, so I don't care if I get crumbs in it, but if this frosting were going to be used for, you know, the final coat of frosting or something like that, I would probably not be dipping it back into the bowl, because I'd be getting a lot of crumbs in there, and that's going to make for a lumpy finish. So I've got both of the small cakes done, and these are all very cool. They're fully cooled down to room temperature. Don't try to frost a hot cake, or else your frosting's going to melt and it's going to be really ugly. So don't do that. The last 10-inch cake is still in the oven, so what I'm going to do is just put a little bit of frosting on this thing now, and then move on to the other two. And when that other cake is finally cooled out of the oven, then we'll be able to stack the big ones. The amount of frosting that you put between the cakes, I think, is kind of a matter of preference. I actually don't like to put too much. It's just kind of my preference. When you bite into a cake and there's just so much frosting in the middle, that tends to kind of be not so good in my opinion. So I'm going to say maybe a 1/4 inch layer of frosting on there. And more if you need to level the surface or something. Okay, I'm going to have fun with this offset spreader and then do the same to these small cakes and build them entirely separately. So what I'm going to do is move the small cake onto here, fully coat that with frosting, stack this one, fully coat this, so there'll be two totally independent stacked cakes like that. Okay, so here we go. So remember, this is just a crumb coat, so I'm really not looking to get the final thickness of icing that I want on there. This is just to sort of seal the cake in, and then we can come back later and really kind of go nuts. But like I say, I don't like super heavily iced cakes, and so I probably won't go nuts. In fact, this is turning out so well, I might just, well, I don't know. We'll see. And like I say, this is the first time I've ever used one of these offset spreaders. it's a whole lot easier than using a butter knife. Even though it looks like it's kind of the same tool, just, you know, a little bit longer and offset, it really makes a huge difference. I'm going to need way more buttercream too, so I think I'm just about to go start on that. Okay, so here we go. We've got the smaller tier finished and crumb coated, and I think I'm going to leave it dry for about, I don't know, an hour or two or something. I'm not really sure. Basically when the frosting is hardened up a bit, then we can put the final coat of ice frosting on there. But I've actually never done the crumb coat before either, so I'm not sure how long to leave it. We'll find out in a minute. And you can see I've got the cardboard under here, and I got tired of trying to ice this thing on the table, so I put it on top of a can of beans or something under there, just so I can get my spreader kind of, you know, nice and vertical on the side here and get a chance to at least get the thing smooth. But it's on the verge of tipping off here, and I can just imagine a terrible accident like that. So I've made 2 batches of buttercream. That's 4 sticks of butter, I think, total, and it looks like just enough to crumb coat both of these cakes. And so I haven't decided yet whether I'm going to put even more icing on. I think I probably will. I think I'll probably make one more batch of buttercream, because I'll probably need it to do a few of the decorations and stuff too. Okay, we're back. It's been quite a while actually, so the icing has you know, skimmed over, and it's not going to come up anymore. So now I can add more icing to it to cover up the crumb coat, and then that'll be the final amount of icing. And then I'll probably put the fondant on pretty soon afterward, so it'll have a good base to stick to. So this will be 3 batches total of the buttercream frosting, and I think that'll be just about right to crumb coat both, fill both tiers, and then do the final coat. So I'm going to put that on, and then for the final smoothing, I'm going to use this kind of a tool. It's actually like a cutting board scraper kind of thing to go along the edge like that and make it nice and smooth. The smoother you can get this part, the better it's going to look after the fondant is on. Okay, there they are. So I've got the frosting about as good as I can get it. Obviously there's some crumbs still in there, but oh well, it's pretty good. And I got the sides pretty straight as well. I was pretty happy with how that came out. I think next time I'm going to strive to make the cardboard as level with the cake as possible. I'm not going to purposefully undercut it. That way it'll make it easier to take the spreader and just go right into the edge, right up to the edge of the cake board, and just right across to make that flat. But I think they look pretty good. So now we can get started with the fondant and cover each of these and then stack them. Okay, marshmallow fondant. So we start with a 16-ounce bag of small marshmallows. And I like to use this monster plastic salad bowl because it's microwave safe and it doesn't conduct heat very well. So it's easier to hang on to, and this thing gets kind of warm. All the marshmallows in. And I think the instructions call for like a tablespoon or 2 of water, so just put a splash of that in. It's not really too critical, I don't think. And then as it says, you want to microwave this in bursts and kind of stir in between, put it back, microwave, stir it, put it back, microwave, and stir it. And eventually you'll end up with a giant mass of molten marshmallow, and that's when you add the sugar and start kneading. Okay, so I'll melt these and then we'll go back to the kneading. Okay, so here we are after a total of maybe 2 minutes of microwaving and stirring, and we've got more or less liquid marshmallow. And the next thing I'm going to do is take some of the shortening and cover my hands with it, and then dump pretty much all the sugar in. You can reserve about, I think the directions say to add 3/4 of it all at once and start mixing, so you can if it seems too dry, you don't have to add the last quarter in. And that'll take a little while. It usually takes, 5 to 10 minutes of kneading to get it where it's not sticky anymore. All of the sugar is incorporated into the marshmallows and it's not really sticky. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and then show you what that looks like. Okay, here we are after a few minutes of kneading. Actually, it's probably about 5 or 10 minutes. And the fondant is stretchy and it's dry even on the part that I stretched out. So I think it's ready. I'm no expert. And I've used up about, almost all the sugar. There's probably a couple cups left or something in there. And if I worked at it, I could probably get more of the sugar into the fondant. But I think it's pretty close. So what I'm going to do is transfer this over to a board. As you can see, I just did all the kneading in this bowl here. I just added the sugar right to the molten marshmallows and just went right in there. But now I'm going to take this over to a board and color it. I have the fondant on my work surface, which is just a piece of parchment paper taped down to the table here, and prep the surface with cornstarch, or else the stuff will stick, even though it won't stick to my hands now because it's loaded with the sugar. But if you press it too thinly, you have to sort of treat it just like it were bread dough. So if you start stretching it out, keep turning it and rubbing the surface with more cornstarch to keep it flowing. And to color it, I usually use gloves, but I can't find one, so I'm just going to go without. And I'd like to make the largest piece dark orange, and then maybe a lighter orange, and then maybe a brown and a dark red or something like that with these smaller pieces. So what I'm going to do is just use some of the food coloring right in there and then just keep kneading this thing over and over and using cornstarch when necessary. Let's see how that goes. Okay, so I think I've got the color about where I want it. One thing I forgot to say is if you're going for sort of a darker color like this, you'll find that you have to add like a lot of food coloring, and then that makes this fondant kind of watery. So what I ended up doing was using more powdered sugar, and instead of using the cornstarch to keep the work surface, flowing, I switched back to powdered sugar and incorporated more of that into the fondant. So now we're going to roll it out. Oh, and another thing, if you do not use gloves like I, did not do today, and you get a little bit of food coloring on your hand, when you're working with the fondant later on, there's a good chance that it's going to come off and leave a mark. So if you're rolling out the fondant, on the last pass on the top, it's not going to be good. Same with the work surface. If you're left with a little drop of food coloring on your work surface, it's going to find its way back into the fondant. It's not going to be a happy time.